Hi, I'm Ryan, and welcome to my coding bootcamp journey. In this series, I will share my experiences as I learned to code through Flatiron School's web development program. If you know anyone that would be interested in this series, please send them to the link at the bottom of your screen. Okay, and what is new this week? So last week we got into the bare basics of object-oriented programming, and this week we dove a little deeper into classes and instances and how they interact with each other and scope and their methods and how that kind of starts to work. So it's interesting getting into a higher level of abstraction on this instead of just building up primitives. Now we're kind of starting to get into more like conceptual level programming where we're not getting into all the nitty gritty mechanics of all this stuff. So a lot of I am starting to see how a lot of the small tasks that we were doing manually in previous weeks are kind of being handled. So yeah, that's been fun. And yeah, what did I struggle with this week? So I was with one of my labs. I was having trouble iterating through a class level array to read the name of an instance. So when I say instance, it's let's say we have a list called Untitled Array. And it's a range of numbers from zero to 10. And when you call Untitled Array, it just returns that array. But if you create an instance, let's say I created an instance called camera because I'm looking at one. And it when you do that, there's more information involved. So it gets assigned an object ID, which is essentially its address in memory, which from what I've heard this week isn't really that useful to us as programmers, but well, at least at this point, don't. I mean, I don't know if they'll be useful to us farther on down the line, but we've been told, yeah, that's what it means. But let concentrate on this stuff. And so when you call in instant and so when you call say the camera instance, it prints out it returns the not necessarily prints out because that's a totally different thing, but to the layman, it prints it out. The object ID, whatever methods are assigned or associate that it is associated with, and their relevant values. So let's say I had with this camera instance, its name, let's say Canon. Yeah, because that's the make. Color will be black. Location would be in studio. So if when you call instance camera, it prints out the object ID, the method name equals Canon, method color equals black, method location equals studio, and it prints all of that out. And in so in this particular lab, I was just calling the class level array. Well, when I did that, I got an array of all of that information for each item that I had put into that array. So item number one, object ID, the method name equals blah blah blah. Next next one, object ID, method name equals blah 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 blah. and I just, all it needed was the value of method name, and the name of the name of the method was literally name. So, yeah, I was really struggling with that, and I as I was just fumbling around, I would just try. I was like, you know what? Why don't just offhand, inside of the iteration block that I had written, I decided, let me just try adding dot name, see if that does anything, and boom, the test passed. So that would definitely prove useful, in the future, to because usually when you're re- I'm thinking that when you want a return, when you want a function, or something to return something, you want the actual value of the thing, not all of that all of that information, because not all of that is going to be useful, depending on what you're doing. So yeah, I can definitely see this being a lot more utilitarian, because then you're only then so then in the program you're writing, all you know is the name, you don't have to like keep track of like multiple variables. Like you don't have to like create a variable for camera underscore name equals then another variable, canon underscore color equals blah blah blah, canon underscore location equals blah blah blah. You don't have to keep track of all of that, and you can just encapsulate it inside of this instance, and then you can then depending on what you need from that part of the program, you just call on that particular method to associated with the instance to pull that specific value. So yeah, that was a bit of a tough lesson, but a very very important one, actually. And in the same in the same lab, on a separate test, I was what was it? Oh yeah, it was something to do with anagrams, which are two words that have the same use the same letters, same number of letters, just in a different order. And I was getting like really granular, like using if else statements and return values. And the thing in Ruby with return is that it it tells it to exit the loop, or exit the iteration. And it was, I was saying, return this value, or and then in another the else statement is like return this value, and it was only able to run one series of tests. And I had multiple series that I had to pass. So yeah, I was really struggling with that, and I found a different iteration method that really I had like let's see, I had like four lines of code, just kind of setting like different variables that I was working with inside those if else conditionals. And the if let's see, so I had total about like 8 lines of code for all of this. And after working with one of the technical coaches, we brought it down to one, and it passed all of the tests. I'm not quite sure what to do about that, as far as like getting real granular about that. Yeah, honestly, I'm not quite sure how to approach that, but yeah, I'll figure it out. Okay, and victories. Victory for me this week was pair programming. We were working on a pretty involved lab that involved building class level methods that encompassed like everything that it's just a matter of like scope and like what information the what information and tasks that the entire class is should be responsible for, and which ones only need to be handled by that particular instance. So, and that's yeah, it's a bit spongy. So, as far at least in at least in my mind at this point, it's a bit of a gray area, but I'm sure that'll clear up as I go through this process. But that was really fun. We worked together really well on that, and there was a lot of give and take. There was like, hey, I got an idea here. Let me try this. Okay, no, that wasn't quite right, but I think we're getting somewhere. He's like, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. Let's try. You have the right idea. Let's try changing this thing over here. And there are a few tests. It was like we were just fumbling around with some for like 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, wait a second. We didn't write self when we defined this method. Let me, and then, like multiple tests pass. So yeah, things like that happened, and it was just real fun interacting with them, and problem solving, and we're like, hey, even if we're not assigned to each other, because every week we're assigned, someone to pair with. Our eval, I talked to our cohort lead on this, and there's like no grading associated with the pair programming. I mean, there's nothing that we're gonna have to turn in together or anything like that. It's just to get into the practice of working through coding problems with people, because that's a major part of what happens in industry. Thing is, with software development, we're not solving technical problems. We're using technology to solve human problems. So, from a lot of what I've been able to gather over these past months is that the actual writing of code is a small part of the job. It's mostly like working with other developers and not necessarily negotiating, but the communication and, hey, let's try it. We could try it this way, or I don't know about that design pattern, let's try it this way, and that kind of thing. So the pair programming in the cohort is mostly just to get us in the habit of working with different people and knowing, like finding out who you work well with, and what kind of personality types work well, and that kind of thing. So I like that the pair programming doesn't have that pressure, that it's just, hey, just you know it's, and honestly, it gives me a bit of a taste of that hackathon feel. I mean, hackathons are definitely a different beast altogether, but there's some commonalities between the two. So yeah, that was a lot of fun for me, and we've individually, neither one of us could really figure it out. I mean, granted, if we had enough time by ourselves, that, I mean, I'm sure we eventually get there. But there's only 24 hours in a day, so it's kind of one of those things, and it's like I can't help but think of the phrase "it takes a village." You know, it's like none of us have all the answers. I mean, and while we were going through this, each one of us kind of picked up on something that the other person missed. So, you know, when you're when you're in the middle of it and debugging and all this, and you know you're in the storm as you work through it, so to speak. You don't really, you know, I don't want to say you get myopic, but you get so focused on like fixing this one thing that you think is causing the problem, but you know, then someone who has a different background than you and different view on things, you know, may see something different. So yeah, that was my victory this week. And what am I looking forward to? I am unlike last week. I wasn't. I don't know what the curriculum for plan is for next week. But I'm guessing we're going to continue diving deeper into object-oriented programming. I am one thing I am looking forward to is having more more pair programming and see who else I work with well and who I don't, and yeah, so yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're just scratching the surface as far as object-oriented programming at this point. Just yeah, I don't know how deep the well is, but I know my you know the water's still up here. I haven't actually gone very much below the surface, so it'll be interesting to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. So that is all I have for you this week. So I do thank you for watching. If you want to stay up to date, please like and subscribe. And feel free to check out the rest of the series. And if you do have any comments or questions, please post them below. And I'll see you in the next chapter.